Chapter 29. The white clouds descended. Thick as milk, they descended. Whatever they touched turned to powder or ooze. Limestone sloughed down in runnels of ash. Basalt crumbled like soggy cake. Clay rooftops melted. Brick walls slumped in yellow dust. Wood simply evaporated. People running, shrieking, scrambling people became skeletons that ran on a few steps before the bones lost volition and the joints separated and all tumbled toward ground but dissolved before they could strike cobbles that, too, dissolved. People died. They died in Halcyon as certainly as they had died on the desert plains below. They would die in Lausanne too, when Wrath did not receive the unconditional surrender it demanded, and in Wington and Seaton and all the others. Within a week, the whole empire would turn to white memory. Alcides fled down toward Phyrexia. They went like rats scurrying away from a sudden, bright light. Panting and shrieking, they flung themselves down any hole that presented itself. Some were death traps, wells and cisterns. Clouds billowed into them and ate away whomever hid within, and brought walls and ceilings slumping after. Other holes, the ones that stank of sewage or sulfur, they led down into a fetid, welcoming darkness. The putrid air was redolent with life, or at least the leavings of life, a glad smell when one is pursued by white, cleansing death. Rats headed downward as well. Rats and dwarves, toads and lizard men, alley cats and cat people, vermin, tedics, goblins and elves, thick-browed barbarians and minotaurs, they all knew to run down into darkness. Foes who would have slit each other's throats in the gleaming city now ran side by side through the murk. They followed each other's makeshift torches, climbed down the ways that others had proved safe, skirted the pits where folk had fallen. They did not slay each other, but neither did they save each other. They would happily follow a sure-footed minotaur down a slick channel and just as happily climb over his corpse wedged in a ruined sluice. The divisions of nation and city-state, of race and gender, dissolved. It was not a mad throng, but tens of thousands of mad individuals flooding away from light and down into darkness. In time, all those winding channels led to the great cesspits. Those had doors to further descents, which led inexorably to the monorig. Gargantuan furnaces, enormous crystals, inexplicable machines, but no doors, only coal chutes into blazing ovens. The refugees arrived and moiled and flooded, water desperate to find a path downward. Perhaps there was no path downward. Perhaps they would all be crushed against the furnaces, and the air would be breathed up, and the white death would blanket them all. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed in unseeable heights and in the chambers of terrified hearts. The voice of Yawgmoth. People of Halcyon, people of the allied foes, hear me. Even now, a wave of death settles over all we have built. It draws the power from every crystal that held our nation aloft. Towers fall. Walls crumble. The dream of Halcyon is over. We have seen the THRAN Temple fall. We have seen the walls of our city turn to ash and sift away. This cloud will course down the channels that have brought us here. It will reach even this deep spot and supercharge the 81 crystal spheres here. They will explode with a force that will level the whole extrusion. A groan of terror rose from the moiling multitude. Fingernails clawed at any crack that might be a doorway. The voice of Yawgmoth came again. The throng quieted beneath its mesmeric balm. It should be a time for utter despair. The dream is over. All is lost, but not all. I have prepared a perfect place for you, a world beyond illness and death, beyond wars and plagues and famines. Oh, my people, how I have longed to bring you to paradise. The aching compassion in his voice swept like a black wind through the chamber. The people breathed it in. Their lungs tingled and their hearts forgot panic. Let me tell you of this land, of Phyrexia. Its entryway lies in deep bedrock, and the world itself exists in a place not of this plane. It will never be destroyed. It is a bounteous world with wide and fertile plains, golden with wild grain and rich in primeval game and deep in black earth. There is endless farmland for any who would work the soil and bring forth its fruits. Above are the plain tower mountains, snow-capped and robed in ancient woodlands. Below stretch deep jungles as impenetrable and fecund as the forests of Jamurat. And lakes, yes, and oceans, yes, and growing cities of design more glorious than all the cities of the empire. Each word set a bright image floating in the darkness. I have prepared this place for you, my people, even for you, my one-time foes. I have made it for you, for I am a god. I ask only that you enter it. I ask only that I may be your god. Suddenly, there was movement in the deepest, darkest corner of the monorig. There came a grating rumble. Massive blocks slid back. A cold blackness opened in the wall. Already the stalled throng shifted and flooded down into it. There, the invitation is given. The way is open. I am the way. Receive me, and enter into paradise. They did. Every last creature opened his or her solitary heart to Yawgmoth, and he entered them. They were no longer solitary, for Yawgmoth dwelt within. Ones became twos, and twos became fours and eights until they all were made a mad nation. Wait, Rebek told the goblins, whose claws fidgeted at the edges of the healing capsule. They were anxious to join the procession out of the monorig and down into Phyrexia. Rebek grasped the healing capsule and forcibly pushed it down. Wait. We can't carry this through that press. Wait until the way clears a bit. The truth was, she was in no hurry to reach Phyrexia. She half hoped the cloud would catch her here. Open it, she found herself saying. The goblins looked at her in consternation and surprise. One piped. No time. We flee now. Open it, Rebek repeated. I want to see my husband's face. Scowling, the goblins complied. Their scaly hands expertly worked in the dark. They were good creatures, more steadfast than any human she had ever met and more clever than half of them. They understood her husband like no one else, even better than she. My goblins, Glacian had called them, with the same tone of voice a man would use to say, my friends. Claws slid beneath the lid of the capsule, and the goblins pushed it open. Rebek leaned over the capsule, knowing even before she saw. Glacian lay absolutely still. His chest did not rise and fall. The breathing mechanism was quiet. Its power stone driver had been knocked loose. It lay beside Glacian's still face. Rebek touched him. His body was cold as the stone beneath her. His skin was as pale as bone. Her hand ran across eyelids that for years had clenched in pain. They were smooth. His lips, for she kissed him now and realized she had not kissed her own husband since Yawgmoth had arrived, were cold and beginning to stiffen. Master Glacian, a goblin said, jiggling the man's leg. Master Glacian. It's too late, Rebek said. The sound was empty in her mouth. Ah. Master Glacian. Ah. He was good man, the goblin cooed. Rebek nodded. He's been trapped in a flaming building for years, and now at last it has collapsed on top of him and burned him up. Too late for Master. The youngest goblin piped up. Not for us. Not too late for us. We leave him here. We can go. Yes, Rebek responded. Leave him here. You can go. The young creature gave an anxious leap and dashed away into the shouldering horde. Two of the others followed, bowing in respect to Rebek before they disappeared. The final goblin lingered a moment longer. You coming? Rebek shook her head. Nodding sadly, the goblin turned to go. In 3 steps, he merged with the black river of refugees. Rebek took a deep breath of the stale air, the smell of herded humanity. All too soon she would be alone forever. Already, she was alone forever. It was a tortuous route down to the caves of the damned. There was little light and much death. Folk stepped from blind cliffs or struck their heads on stalactites. Always, the next in line forged ahead. They trod first on the bodies of the fallen. The leaders led and died. Those behind pressed forward with desperate weight. At long last, they reached the bottom. Halcite guards guided them. What a glad sight were those silver-armored warriors. Now the way would be clear. Now no one else had to die. At the heels of the quick-marching guard, the refugees swept down through the caves. They reached the great cavern that had once held untouchable noble houses. Now the cavern bore no memory of them. It had been cleansed by Yawgmoth's touch. Only insectal machines filled the spot, guardians on either side of the glimmering, inviting portal. Laughter mixed with hoots of joy. Songs rose among the refugees. They were old songs that spoke of the founding of the empire, of the beautiful and plentiful land that awaited those bold enough to enter. These folk were bold. They marched behind bobbing helmets Yawgmoth's nation. They neared the portal. Sunlight streamed through. Between helmets, there were glimpses of verdant forests, vast plains, grey mountains, even a city of elegantly sloping roof lines. The songs quickened. In a sudden rush, they were through, into the sunlight of a new world. It was vast and beautiful. The way was lined with expectant Halcite guards. Troops stood, rank on rank, to the verges of the forest below and into the middle of the plain above. Behind the wall of silver armor was armor of a different sort embedded in skin and muscle. Perhaps it was metal plate or perhaps modified bone. Whatever, it forced the skin out in ridges and lines. The soldiers there had other alterations: horns poking up from shoulders, claws grafted on where once human hands had been, metal implements sewn into suppurating wounds. The song died on the refugees' lips. Some tried to turn back. Those behind, craning for a view of the new world, forced them onward. Just ahead waited the savior Yawgmoth, the god Yawgmoth, surrounded by his hideous creatures. He opened his hands expansively. "Welcome, my children. Welcome to Phyrexia.